At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Plan Commission. This is April 22nd, 2024. Kelly, roll please.
Mayor Boyd,
I'm here.
Citizen Member Bush,
Here.
Citizen Member Higgins,
Here.
Alderperson Hanson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, Mark. You're all good.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Alderperson Gantz, Citizen Member Raymaker,
Here.
Citizen Member Schilling.
Here.
Very good, thank you. Alderperson Gantz is excused. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the March 25th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by me, seconded by Grant. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comments upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission. Anyone have any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? If so, just state your name. Were you going to say something?
I have one.
Okay. Anyone other than Dan, in person or virtually, have any public comments upon matters not on the agenda? I'll go there first. Dan, it's yours.
All right. So since we have two new elected officials on the Plan Commission here, Peter and I would like to present an option to you for the next either couple meetings. Is I guess you would say, zoning code refresh of what's the reasons we made some decisions over our period of establishing the new zoning code and the changes that have sort of happened since, some of the kind of high level things. The reason for that is so that the new Plan Commission members sort of get a background understanding of what the existing Plan Commission members did through their discussion points. So with that, just requesting a date that works best for everybody. And so Peter next month will actually be virtual. He won't be in person. So if you want us to be in person, it'll be a June meeting. If you wish it to be at the next meeting, it'll be in the May meeting, but Peter will be virtual. So kind of be a refresher we'll put at the end of the agenda so that we don't hold anybody up that has an actual agenda item. So it's up to the Plan Commission.
Thank you. Should we decide on that right now, or you want to send something out after?
You can do it afterwards because technically it's not an actionable item, but it's up to you guys however you want to do it.
Sound good, everybody?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan. You know what's going on. Thank you very much. Absolutely, yes, you are correct. Again, public comments upon matters not on the agenda. This is the last call. Anyone have anything to state that's not on the agenda? If so, just state your name. All right, thank you, Dan. Mm-hmm. Item 4, a public hearing on the proposed boundary amendment for number 2 for Tax Increment Financing District number 10 is scheduled for 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as can be heard. Kelly, can you read the notice of the public hearing, please?
The public hearing notice was published in the Press Times on April 12th, 2024.
Thank you. Recommendation from the Plan Commission, from Dan.
All right, so the item in front of you tonight is the boundary amendment number 2 for Tax Increment District number 10. For those that don't know where that is located on our southeast side. That is primarily the East Business Park. Now that TID has also been overlaid with TID 17, but we're talking about TID 10 tonight. So primarily the areas around Commerce Drive, Heritage Road, some of Enterprise, and some of just off of PP as well. So kind of a large area, and so this boundary amendment tonight is primarily for one, a cleanup action around Bellmark, but 2, also for an expansion of the TID boundary to assist with the expansion of Valley Cabinet into a vacant parcel that they've owned for many years, and we've been waiting for this kind of next phase of expansion. So that's what's here tonight. So our process is on the screen. You can see there we're kind of halfway through the TID amendment process. So we're at the public hearing tonight. If you do elect to move forward with this agenda item, it'll be on the May 7th council meeting. That is that will meet the separation distance between Plan Commission and council meetings. So that is our tentative plan if you make the motion to approve tonight. As I mentioned, TID 10 is an industrial TID. It was originally focused on the undeveloped lands on where now Bellmark Plant 7 sits and where One Source Technology that you approved a couple of years ago sits, and a couple others. In 2015, that expanded to the north to actually help Bellmark expand its corporate office, as well as add that walkway or the skywalk over Heritage. And then it's also helped a couple other businesses during that time as well. Again, so this is just another opportunity to help an existing De Pere business expand and keep their expansion here in De Pere versus elsewhere. So we're looking at the original area, but as I mentioned, the two cleanups on your or in your packet that'll go through here again is Bellmark cleanup between plants 3 and 5, and I'll show you that here in a second. But we're looking at a boundary amendment. We're not proposing to change any of the project costs because the project costs that were included in the first two project plans were still valid. So I have just taken those two original project plans and summarized them into one document. We do that so that we're not looking at 3 separate documents over time. This one more or less supersedes the other 2, and we can have one document to look at. So we've added several of those parcels. We've also made the updates to the acknowledgements and the official sections. We made the updated summary for the but findings tests that are required by the state. We've updated the land use information, the zoning information with the new zoning code, the zoning maps. We've updated our 12% test threshold requirements that we have to meet anytime we do a boundary amendment or creation. And then we also did, like I said, amend all the maps. So in your packet, you do see the original TID 10 boundary, which is kind of the dark red line, or I should say the existing TID 10 boundary. The yellow is the overlay that we created for TID 17 for the extension of Commerce Drive and to also assist with the funding of the Southern Bridge Corridor. And the areas that we're talking about here tonight are the, I guess you say, boundary amendment, which would be this parcel to the north to clean up the Bellmark property line. They have a building that currently bisects a property line. They could not combine those parcels because then they'd have a non-contiguous whole parcel in the TID, and you can't have that. So this allows them to combine their parcels and kind of create a better process for everybody. And then you take a look at Valley Cabinet, which is to the east. And their primary expansion area is about an 80,000 square foot manufacturing space plus an 8,000 square foot additional office space as well. And they've been working through planning staff to on the final approvals for those for that site plan, all hinged on the fact that they are looking for a future development agreement to come from finance and personnel after a boundary amendment is complete. So they're doing their due diligence on the back end on a variety of items, and this is just one step in that process. In your packet, I did summarize all the project costs. So anything that you see in the original operating plan that was here in 2012, the amendment in 2015, and I added another line there to show that, again, we're not proposing any additional changes to the project cost at this time. So we're keeping all the existing project costs. There haven't been spent down all those project costs, but part of that has to do with the economy. Half of that has to do with projects not shaping or the creation of a new TID overlay that sort of locked in those parcels. So we have capacity in the existing project plans to utilize those funds. We also then did include new non-project costs, and what that means is what projects are either going to be impacting the TID that are paid for by other funding sources. And when this TID was originally created, Southern Bridge did not have a dollar amount attached to it. It had a concept, but it did not identify those amounts. We now know roughly what those amounts are, and so I have updated that to include about $120 million of non-project costs, and that includes the entire Southern Bridge corridor, even though only a portion of it would be impacted TID 10. I've updated the cash flow projections. I took a look at our business parks and where our estimated property growth has been over the past few years, and I sort of averaged that out over the past about 8 years, and that's about a 3% property appreciation, so we projected that moving forward. We updated the new mill rate with the proposed changes by the recent referendum, as well as potentially a new referendum coming here in the later part of this year or early next year. And then I did just update the cash flow projections that you do see in your project plan. In addition to this, what you don't see, or you will see in one of the charts, but you see a bunch of growth numbers, and that's working with Bellmark on all of their facilities and kind of doing a master plan for where they're taking their future facilities. Bellmark's always adding on to a facility. It may be 20,000 square feet, it may be 10,000 square feet in office. They're always adding, and we asked to meet with them to kind of go through what those look like, and those are also have been included in this project plan. And I did obviously include the reduced mill rate. One of the other things that kind of showed in the original project plan is, in the 2015 project plan, is the mill rate was proposed, or I should say scenarioed, to be flat over the entire life of the district. Well, as we've seen over the past 10 years now, we've seen a 33.5% reduction in the mill rate in that 10 years. So a lot of the project costs have been stalled because the revenue just hasn't been there to pay off those costs. Projects have happened, but just don't have as much as we anticipated back in 2015 and 2012. So again, I updated the tax increment performance for TID 10, and I'm available for any questions on that one. The last thing I did want to talk about is I also did update the analysis to the impact of the overlapping jurisdictions based off of the 2012 and 2015 kind of percentages, and extrapolated that forward to the TID closure of 2033. So with that, here for any questions?
All right, thank you. Hey, Mark, just a reminder, when you're not on, just have your mic muted, okay? We're assuming that's you, but we could be off. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm turning pages. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, we gather that. You're on like page 20. All right, thank you very much. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing opened on this item. If anyone wants to speak on this item in the agenda, just state your name. This is, again, item 4. For the second time, while the public hearing is open, if you're virtual and you want to say something on this item, just state your name. For the third and final time, while the public hearing is open, now is your chance to speak on this item on the agenda. Just state your name. I'll declare the public hearing closed, and I would make a motion to approve Resolution PC 2401, recommending adoption of the proposed boundary amendment number 2 for Tax Increment Financing District number 10.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Shane. Additional discussion or comments?
Mayor.
Alderperson Hanson.
On the map, Dan, the Valley Cabinet expansion's listed as Boundary Agreement 2, but then there's these 3 other small parcels that are listed BA3, BA4, and BA5.
Yep.
So is there technically 4 boundary amendments for the Valley Cabinet expansion? Or is it all lumped?
This is one boundary amendment for the entire district at this time. We had a 2015 boundary amendment which brought in far more parcels than this, but your boundary amendment is one amendment. It's just what you're changing your boundary to. And state statutes allow you to do up to 4 boundary amendments over the life of a tax increment district. So this is boundary amendment number 2 of those 4.
And then you mentioned cleaning up the Bellmark. So the original boundary agreement 1, that was never like formally adopted, or?
No, it was.
Okay,
It
but now
was-
we're cleaning up the.
Yeah, we're cleaning up what probably should have been added during that boundary amendment number 1. This parcel that you see here probably should have been added at that time because the building does straddle that property line. And when you have a building straddling a property line, the county doesn't like that, building code doesn't like that, no one really likes that, but they haven't been able to combine them because there's a tax increment district line there. And you must have whole parcels inside of your tax increment district. So that's the reason why it's sort of languished like this. And we also didn't want to use a boundary amendment, one of our 4, just to do a cleanup action, so it sort of stayed there until we had to do an amendment, and then we brought it in during this time.
Are you good? Mark, did you have anything out there?
No, I'm good to go.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here? All right, seeing there are none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next public hearing, item 5.
Mayor?
Yes.
That's approval of the resolution that was in your packet, correct?
Yes, it is correct. Yep.
Gotcha.
And I think I stated that as well too, didn't I? the
Yep, I just want to
resolution?
make sure that was...
Yes, yep. Item 5, a public hearing on the proposed project plan for Tax Increment Financing District number 18 is scheduled for 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as can be heard. Kelly, can you read the notice, please?
The public hearing notice was published in the Press Times on April 12th, 2024.
Thank you. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. The item in front of you tonight is very similar to our process, but I'll walk through it. It's the creation of Tax Increment District number 18, primarily the area roughly known as, the East Downtown area. As we look at this one, you'll also see that we have 2 other tax increment districts in the downtown. This would be an overlay to both of them, with the caveat that one of them is slated to be terminated later because of this creation of this TID. So we'll walk through that here shortly, but we're in, again, that middle stage of that process. So we're looking at TID number 18 as a rehab and conservation district, and what that means is it's a 27-year life of a district. That 27 years means you can have 22 years of expenditure period. It's being created as an overlap to TID number 7 and TID number 16. 16 primarily being the 126 North Broadway parcel that we had RFP'd for development several years ago, and that kind of got stalled right during COVID. And as a result, we're now bringing it back into this one. So once we have it, a new TID, that parcel will have its clock start again, and so therefore we can terminate TID 16 at that time. But TID 7 was impacted in 2008. It was created in 2006, and 2 years later, we had a recession, we had a redetermination of value, a lot of stuff happened on that TID. In addition to that one, we had a pandemic and then also delay on the Catalyst project, the Mulva Center. Mulva Center was originally envisioned in 2015, and here we are, 2023, it opened. So there was 8 years there or so in which what would have been a tax generating parcel, if it would have been redeveloped as an RFP for mixed use on that site, would have been generating income. But now that we have this project here, the ancillary projects around it will help TID number 7. And unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of life left in TID number 7 for a lot of those projects. So it's being created as an overlay, and primarily the overlay in which this matches is the front street block that we've been talking about for a while with our Parrot Square parking structure, and where we most recently acquired the tile and stone building. So that area there. Our immediate focus of this TID is going to be to facilitate the redevelopment of the former Shopko in the downtown. But there are other redevelopment sites in the area, as I mentioned, Front Street. We're also looking at some of our parking lots as some of this redevelopment starts to happen. As one of the project costs you'll see in there is a public parking structure, and once that is constructed, there's the opportunity to redevelop some of our open parking lots that are underutilized, and so that's sort of the target as well. So our timetable, as I mentioned, it's a 27-year TID. Expenditure period is 22 years, so by 2046, we will have that last of our expenditure period, and May 7th of 2051 will be our termination date. Unfortunately, I looked, that's roughly the time I retire.
No, you're staying.
I was just saying that's 27 years out. But looking at that, you can see the TID boundary there. That's in the red area. The sort of yellow that you do see here is the overlay to TID number 7, and TID number 16 is a small single-use TID that was created that will be terminated later this year. We have about 52 parcels identified, about 18 acres of real property, about 11.5 acres of right-of-way that are included in your packet. That detailed information can be seen as a breakdown. When we establish a rehab and conservation district or a blight elimination or any district, we have to make a determination of what type that district is. And so in this case, we have to meet the definition of rehab and conservation that's in your packet. And staff has identified that when you look at all of these parcels, that means we've identified about 54.5% of the parcels in this TID boundary meet the definition of in need of rehab and rehab and conservation. That means it can be demolished and rebuilt, and it just means that it's nearing the blighted stage. So it's kind of I guess you say stopping before we get to blight. So we've identified the majority of our underutilized parcels, the former Shopko building, all of Front Street block, and other parcels in there that could use additional rehab and conservation that meets that definition. So if you recommend approval tonight, the council will make a separate declaration during their resolution that states that it meets the definition of rehab and conservation. Cash flow assumptions are another element of this project plan. We've identified, again, looking at the average property appreciation rate in the downtown. It's a little bit more conservative than our business park. About 1.5% appreciation rate. And then we're also, again, looking at the same mill rate assumptions because we're on that same side of the river that we were just looking at for TID 10. So those mill rate assumptions are the same moving forward that you most recently saw. Project plan is built out, again, as the 27-year TID, so you can see some of that one. So when you look at those assumptions, based off of all the projects, not only just Shopko, but Front Street and other projects in their city-owned parking lots, we're looking at about $128 million of new assessed value over the district's life. You're also looking at about $62 million worth of property appreciation at that 1.5%. So again, you should have to take all these assumptions into consideration. Again, our mill rate impacts, again, I just want to touch base on the importance of, as we move forward with these projects, understanding the mill rate impacts is key to the success of these TIDs. So a little bit different than what you saw in the last project plan is we are establishing now our planned project costs. These are the categories that I always recommend to put inside of a project plan inside of a TID. And I always put at least a small nominal amount in every category, because in case something happens, you can then move money to those categories. You don't have to follow your project plan to a T, but the project costs have to be identified. So in this case, we've identified infrastructure costs, capital costs, site development costs, land acquisition and assembly. We look at development incentives, professional services, discretionary payments, including what would be considered allocations to a donor or be a donor TID to another's if necessary, administrative costs, organizational costs. I don't have inflation included in this one, but I have it in my notes that those numbers are included inside of the project cost numbers themselves. They're not separate pulled out, because we are pretty detailed in our actual projects that we're anticipating for this project. You also have financing fees, which would be your cost of borrowing, so your financing fees and the actual interest payments. Financing fees are there, and then any capitalized interest that you're taking on as part of this project. So overall, you're looking at about $50 million worth of TID expenditures here, $51 million. And then we can go through the project plan that identifies the actual funding sources moving forward. So we have to, again, meet the 12% threshold. So again, I briefly touched on that one most recently with TID 10, but what that means is all of the increment generated currently in our TIDs plus the base value of the TID you're proposing to create or amend has to be below 12% of your equalized value. Last year we were at, I should say in 2022, we were at about 4.8%, but because of rapid growth in our business parks and else, we jumped up to 9.06%. This additional TID creation would put us at about 9.6% of our limit, and we will have to wait until August to see how this impacts us moving forward after that. Where is our capacity? As soon as we close the TID, that capacity will then go back down. So TID number 8 is our next one to be closed. So we are in compliance with the 12% threshold. We also have to identify in your project plan, does it meet the retail 35%? You have to state whether or not your project plan is going to be above or below the 35% threshold of retail inside of your TID. In this case, if you took a parcel by parcel basis, yes, probably more than 35% of the project area will be devoted to retail. However, if you do it on a square foot basis, we'll actually be below that, because we'll have multiple story buildings that will kind of skew those numbers back the other way with general commercial and residential uses. So state will have to have a little bit clarification language, but by definition of a parcel by parcel basis, more than 35% of the TID will be devoted to retail. I did include all the maps in the project plan. It's our existing land use, future land use, zoning, the 1/2 mile radius boundary, which we're allowed to make improvements to some of the infrastructure. Again, when in your downtown, it's a little bit skewed because 1/2 mile is quite a bit far out of your downtown versus a business park. It actually is impactful more. So, but in this case, you can technically make improvements up to 1/2 mile within your district boundary. And then I did just identify the initial plan project costs that are in your project plan of actual hard numbers. So those numbers are there. And then you saw in your packet a nice long chart that you probably couldn't read. I apologize for that one, but the detail is there. I can summarize it more, but I figured it was best for everybody to kind of keep those numbers. So you saw in your packet a pro forma projection for all of the projects, and you see the colors that you see up top here are matched with in the project plan the pro forma, so you can see where the numbers were generated from. So this first half of the long chart that I'm showing you is the revenue that's being proposed to be generated, including general fund advances, capitalized interest, and a variety of other things. Again, these are just ballpark figures as we move forward, and we'll work with our financial advisor to structure our borrowing as we go. But this is what's being projected forward. On the other half of it are all the expense costs based off of our proposed borrowings and our proposed expenses. So you can kind of see how that lays out, as well as some allocations and some portion of the parking structure. Parking structure itself is included as a project cost, but we are anticipating user fees, general fund, and a variety of other sources to help fund that structure, because it can't be funded solely by a tax increment district, and it can't be funded solely by a general fund. It's just not feasible to construct those these days at this price point. And some have asked, well, why is the city constructing a parking structure versus others? Well, in short, to construct parking structures under every one of those buildings either in the Shopko project becomes a little bit infeasible at its scale. underground public parking is a big challenge. It's very costly. It ranges between $50,000 to $70,000 a stall, and therefore makes projects almost in very, very challenging unless you get into the higher market rates. And that's when, again, we're trying to keep at least relatively approachable lease rates in a lot of these projects. And once you do underground parking, those relatively affordable, I shouldn't say affordable, approachable lease rates become a challenge. And so by doing above ground parking, we can then leverage the additional growth that we anticipate from that one. It allows us then to construct additional units on our publicly owned parking lots. And for when we have larger overflow for Mulva and other projects, they have a public parking structure to go to. So that's the reason for you see a public parking structure component as part of this TID project plan. I did include the TID overlap projection, so you can see the majority of that information is there. But in short, if we were to take today's mill rate, the overall taxes being generated by the project at today's rate is about $281,000. Assuming everything goes and all these projects happen upon TID closure, you're looking at about 2.5 million in new value, if you include, or sorry, 2 million in new value. However, it'd actually be higher, but our city threshold is actually only 50% of what everyone else can do. So the reason why we're creating it this year is also in the future that number drops to 10% in the future. So that's the reason why it's important to create it today. So with that, I am available for any questions. I know it's a lot of information in your packet, but I'm available for any questions about this project plan.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open on this item on the agenda. So if someone wants to speak regarding this item, now is your chance, either in person or virtually. If so, just state your name and we'll bring you to the table up here and you can ask questions. For the second time, the public hearing is open. If you want to speak on this item on the agenda, now is your time. For the third and final time, while the public hearing is open on this item on the agenda, on Tax Increment Financing District number 18, now is your time to speak. I'll declare the public hearing closed, and for discussion purposes, I will make a motion for Resolution PC 2402, adoption of the proposed boundaries of Tax Increment Financing District number 18, and the adoption of the Tax Increment Financing District number 18 project plan. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Hanson. I'll just start the discussion here. Obviously, a lot of information, so you pick up a lot, and you do a very good job explaining it as well. This large amounts of money on these last two. A lot of municipalities might go through one of these every 15 years, but here we are. So just a couple of things. We have tax increment districts and then obviously financing goes with it. Just really briefly, background on how we got here. Municipalities have the ability to do this to assist in projects, correct?
Well, you're asking me to give a history lesson on TIDs. You just entered a wrong territory.
Oh, by the way, he is the expert. So briefly, when did this all start? Give me the year on it.
On TIDs?
Yes.
TIDs is a tool that was created in 1973.
73. That wasn't that difficult, was it?
But it was created primarily because prior to that one, a lot of the federal government was assisting with more projects, and as the federal funding got less and less, the burden to encourage economic development became more and more on the local municipalities to do. And as a result of that one, what was happening was the local municipalities were spending all the money. The counties, the school district, and the technical colleges were all reaping the benefits of all their efforts. So in 1973, in the state of Wisconsin, and years prior to that one throughout the country, tax incremental financing was created in some form or another in most states as a tool to allow all four overlapping jurisdictions to agree to forego the future revenue during that time period so that the local municipality can take on the projects, do the work, take on the risk still to do the work, with the benefit that when the TID closes, everybody benefits from it. So rising tides raises all boats. That was the reason for it, and that's how it's been in operation. Now, the TID law itself has changed many times over its inception, and we are under a current situation with a rehab and conservation district with a 27-year life.
So on the 50 to 10%, that's a sizable number, correct?
Yeah. So, and what I mean by that is when the TID closes, all the overlapping jurisdictions previous to several years ago would have seen that levy limit increase could all go to their operations. Well, again, due to negotiations at the state level, everybody else gets 100% of that growth. The city only gets 50% of that growth. Well, again, during negotiations during the budget cycle, when you have a governor who's doesn't like TIDS as much coming from a school district background and a legislative body who doesn't like TIDS as much coming from their background, they all agreed that that number for municipalities now comes down to 10. So the risk is a lot higher on municipalities to do this moving forward. So we probably will not be creating as many TIDs or amending as many TIDs moving forward, amending not so much, but creating as many TIDs moving forward after this year, because there's a greater risk from the municipality with little lift at the end of the project.
And I say this publicly because this is a big concern for the municipalities. It's a great tool that we have, and to incentivize these projects is extremely important to municipalities, but to take that away and make it less attractive, that's concerning.
So if I go to this screen here, you can see at the current mill rate projection, the county is at 26 or 22.6% of the tax bill. The local is at 40, school district 32. Now again, that will go up with their new most recent referendum. And the technical college is at 4. Well, upon TID closure, you can see that the county at 22% would be a sizable increase in their levy. The school district, sizable increase, technical college, sizable increase. You can see the percent increase is very substantial. But the cities would have been about $1 million, but ours is 50% of that, so it's 500. You drop that down another 50, our increase with $120 million worth of projects and almost $200 million worth of property growth, our levy that we can then add upon TID closure would be about $50,000, which is a big risk to take for not a lot of lift in
It's a huge risk.
2051 when projects themselves are going to cost a lot more. So.
All right, all the person Hanson start politicking and lobbying so we can get this thing changed. So I'll start with you first. Questions or comments on this? Anyone have anything? Mark, do you have anything out there?
Yeah, just, Dan, with this rehab and conservation district and then the overlap, I really appreciate you putting together those long form financials, because I have no idea how you would have put that together. So well done. That really laid it out nicely. Because this is a rehab and conservation TID, I noticed there's $27 million in incentives. Is that because there's so much rehab that you are expecting?
Not so much so as just the fact that that's where project plans are going these days. When cost of construction has rapidly outpaced assessed values and interest rates are rapidly increasing, to get a project to the starting line, let alone to the finish line, is requiring a lot more lift by the municipalities. And you look across the state, the percents of project plans that are contributing towards development incentives, which is again the reason why both the legislature and the governor went with what they did, was they were seeing more incentives versus more infrastructure projects. But again, as the cost of construction is rapidly outpaced, that's just what's happened in order to complete that gap. Developers are expected to make a market rate of return on a project, and I went through that very in depth during the July presentation when we talked about the term sheet with the owners of the former Shopko and their development proposal. Developers are expected to make an expected rate of return, and if their investors don't make it, they're not going to invest in the project because they could go invest in safer ventures elsewhere. And so there's left then trying to find who will fund that gap. Sometimes it's a grant source if it's in a right district, and what I mean by that is the Village of Ashwaubenon and Green Bay have opportunity zones. We do not. They have opportunities to do low-income housing tax credits in projects. We do not. We're just not positioned well to do those things. Our community is not positioned well for those items. So as a result, we're left as a community funding more of a project at a local level than ever before, I guess you'd say.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, and that keeps us competitive in the game. So I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up development incentives because we had talked about that, I think, last week as well, too. It's a different number. Other questions or comments? Shane?
I just had a question, Dan, in regards to the percent of the city's equalized value in the TIDs. Proposing to get to 9.6-ish
Yep.
If you hit that 15% mark, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but what is the penalty of that? What does that look like?
Well, it's a 12% threshold.
12%, sorry.
You just can't create any more TIDs or amend any to add any boundary to it. Now, we are in a unique situation. One of the reasons why our mill rate has dropped as it has is because our equalized value and growth in our residential projects has rapidly outpaced other things. And so over the past 5 years, our equalized value as a city as a whole has increased $1 billion. And as a result of that, our number changes every year. So we do anticipate another growth. We do annual reassessments on all properties, and the reason for that is so that we stay within our required limits for the state's for our equalized ratios. And as a result of that one, we do those updates annually. And because De Pere is a very desirable market, because we have 2 quality school districts and it's a desirable place to live, our housing prices have rapidly grown, and as a result of that one, our equalized value has as well. So even though we've added a lot of value, next year it may stay at 9, it may drop down, it may increase a little bit. The big growth in the business parks is what kind of spurred on the growth from that 4% to the 9% in 1 year. So we're not anticipating a ton of growth like we saw over the past 2 years, and so I'm anticipating it to be relatively stable, but we will be in our upper end still. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, in terms of the area that overlaps with TID 7 and 18, primarily the west side of South Broadway, are we expecting that to remain in TID 7 until the end of TID 7's life? And if so, if we have development projects there, can they get TID financing from both TIDs?
they cannot. Once it is established as an overlay, the impact will go to the overlay district. It's what's known as a frozen overlap. So those parcels underneath will not see benefit. And the reason why we're doing that, and you also see in your project plan that there's an allocation to TID number 7. Again, because TID number 7 doesn't have a lot of life left. I think it's another 10 years or so. Our intention is to potentially use the growth from those parcels to help pay off TID 7 because, again, we lost the revenue generating, the main powerhouse of what was going to sit on that southeast corner of the roundabout. That was going to be the revenue generating powerhouse. It wasn't because it's now a much different project and we're grateful that we have it, but we're sort of left trying to find a ways to help fund it. So we're hoping that that one then will help kind of pay for that one. And all right.
All right.
Answer your question? Great. Other questions anyone has? And we have a motion in a second, correct? It's been a while.
Yep.
All right, very good. That said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And I do say this flippantly, but Dan is the expert in the state of Wisconsin on TIDs and TIFs, so we have the main guy right here. Plus, he loves this stuff. You really do, don't you?
I will say that for those that don't want to attend it, or you do, but there's a ED 101 for local elected officials, and I'm presenting on TIDs. So
Yep, this is it.
you
I mean, we're
could-
fortunate we have him. Actually.
coming up in a few
I mean,
weeks.
De
here.
Pere is very fortunate, so thank you very much. Let's go to, send that date to me then, Dan, I'll make sure.
It was in the Friday memo, so if you got the
Oh.
Friday memo, so.
I must have missed that. Item 6, consideration and possible action for a 3-lot and one outlot CSM at 230 North Wisconsin Street and a 1-lot and 1 outlot CSM at 230 North Broadway Street, parcels ED-875, ED-861. Dan?
Peter.
Yeah, I'll promise I'll
Peter?
try to talk a little bit less than Dan did.
Aw. And he laughs.
What we are reviewing here is actually 2 city certified survey maps. They look like they're different sizes on the screen because I adjusted them so they're about the same scale to compare to the right and left. If you look at the site map in the middle, this is the 200 block of North Broadway Street and North Wisconsin Street, 2 separate parcels. This parcel is shown in this CSM right here, and then this parcel obviously is shown right here on the CSM page. The proposal is to take the CSM that you see on the left side of the screen, divide it into 1 lot and 1 outlot. There is a small flaw on the document in your packet, as it shows an area dedicated to the public that actually is proposed to be an outlot at this time. Then the CSM to the left is proposed to be created into 3 lots with 1 outlot at this, where did my mouse go? I lost my mouse.
It's there.
Oh, did it come back for me? Oh, good. Yeah, right here, kind of a sideways L-shape line. When staff reviewed this, we identified that it meets all criteria for land dividing, and it should be subject to the 3 conditions in your report. Staff recommends approval. Do note that item number 3 does identify being subject to additional comments from DPW staff. The reason for that is we did receive the CSM a little bit later than expected, but we still wanted to keep it on this agenda. The majority of the comments coming from DPW staff are technical corrections that can be made between staff and the developer. So planning staff recommends approval, subject to these 3 conditions for both of these certified survey maps.
Thank you. My computer's frozen, so I can't read the recommendation. So if someone wants to take it, make a motion in a second so we can facilitate discussion and possibly open the meeting. Can anyone read it?
I'll make a motion for the consideration and possible action for a 3-lot and 1 outlet CSM at 230 North Wisconsin Street and a 1-lot and 1 outlet CSM at 230 North Broadway Street, parcels ED-875 and ED-861.
I'll second.
Motion by Shane, seconded by Brenda. Discussion and/or comments. Now, I know there's some people here, I think, possibly for this item on the agenda. So if someone wants to speak on, I'm thinking this item, just raise your hand and we can open this up if anyone wants to. If not, and you're all okay. I don't want to miss anybody here. And by the way, Dan or Peter, this goes where next then? Does this go to council?
Because there are no right-of-way dedications as part of this certified survey map, this does not go to council. Plan Commission is the final review.
Okay. So again, if anyone wants to speak on this item out there, now is your chance. I guess I'll go to anyone here then. Anyone here want to speak on this, on the CSM? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, Peter, the parking ramp that we've been talking about, is that going to be located on outlot 1?
Let me just turn
Lot
the page
1.
to make sure I get to the right.
Lot 1. Okay.
I believe it's going to be lot
Lot 1.
1. Okay.
Okay. And then the plaza that we've talked about in the past as well, I don't see that specifically on that map. I think it should be around lot 3, but I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
The plaza?
The public plaza with like the pedestrian path.
I can address that one, Peter.
Thank you.
That's a site plan related item. That's not a CSM related item.
Okay.
So we wouldn't talk about that here,
Okay.
but that would come up another time. Other questions or comments? Mark, did you have anything?
No, I'm good to go.
All right, thank you. That said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry about that, Mark. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move to item 7. Item 7, consideration and possible action for a zoning map amendment from PI 1 Neighborhood Public and Institutional District to R2 60 2-unit district at 705 4th Street, 713 4th Street, 717 4th Street, and 806 3rd Street, and from R260 to PI1 at 319 Marsh Street, parcels WD-240, WD-245, WD-246, WD-250, and WD-776.
Okay.
Peter?
Thank you. This is a zoning map amendment request. All 5 of these parcels are owned by St. Norbert College. In the site map that you see on the left side of the screen, there actually are 2 identical maps. I split it so that we can see that the 4 parcels on the far left side, they're residential lots. Their proposed future is to no longer be part of St. Norbert College. So the college is proposing to take it out of the PI district, which is typically reserved for things like schools, churches, and parks. And so then it could then be sold to entities for residential use. The map that you see on the right side, kind of towards the left side of the screen, the single parcel, that was acquired by St. Norbert College, and they want to bring that into the PI1 district so it can become part of the college campus. When we compared it to the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses, the proposed concept for its future comply, and planning staff recommends approval of this request.
Thank you. Questions, comments, motion? How about a motion first and a second, then we can have questions, comments?
Make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Brenda. Discussion, questions? Mark, did you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8, discussion about site plans received since the March 2024 Plan Commission meeting and review of the status of recently approved development projects. Peter?
Thank you. As we do at the end of the meeting each month, we present to you the list of the status of site plan reviews. In the middle of the screen, you can see the interactive map, which is available on our city website. Then on the right side of the screen is the list of projects and all of their status, so that you have an opportunity to ask us questions about a specific project if there are any.
Thank you. Again, Alderperson Hanson, I'm sure it's not new to you, but this is
Yeah, I've checked
relatively
that
new
out a
for
few
all of
times.
us.
Yeah,
It's pretty impressive.
it is.
It's,
Yep.
it's a nice thing to send constituents to the questions, et cetera. Anyone have any questions that you have for Peter right now? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, in the past when I was looking at this, Peter, I saw that there was a tsunami car wash development on Lawrence Drive.
You did?
But, yes, I do not see it on the list anymore. And it looked like staff had previously approved a site plan, so just wondering about the status of that.
We had a conversation with the authorized representative for that site, and unfortunately, Tsunami Car Wash has kind of walked away from the project.
Okay.
And so it's a terminated project at this time. So it recently has been removed from the map. You'll still see it on the screen because this is a generation from the 18th of April. But as of today, it no longer is on the maps.
And then what's the usual timeline to go from site plan to permits issued? Just wondering, because like North Shore Bank, it's been about 3 months since the site plan was approved.
Because of the fact that the Plan Commission and Council have incorporated a staff review process for site plans, our reviews tend to go much quicker now because people don't have to wait a month to get onto a Plan Commission agenda. So if a really well-written site plan is submitted to us, staff can get it reviewed in 2 to 3 weeks and oftentimes even less if they can get us a site plan that doesn't have a lot of conditions. And from that point, it's then in the hands of that developer to come back to us with their request for permits. I think you mentioned North Shore Bank. They got their approval, I believe, somewhere towards the end of last year, maybe the beginning of this year, and just have not come back yet for their permit requests.
And then, in addition to that one, I just want to also add that, this question's been asked a few times, to staff by just the general constituents, is technically somebody per the zoning ordinance has about a year to act on their approved site plan. So they could wait 364 days and then they could get a permit and then wait 364 more days to actually act on that permit. So technically the max that they could do without requesting a formal extension of either one of those items is about 2 years from the time they receive approval to the time they actually break ground. But not too many people are doing that, but that is the maximum.
And then just quick question on the Chicago Street Pub. People are going to be happy to hear that they want to put pickleball courts in there. But just wondering about their new parking lot. Right now, the overflow lot is all gravel. So it looks like they're going to be required to pave that entirely then as part of this?
They actually are proposing to pave it as part of their site plan. That the most recent site plan, I believe, arrived over the weekend and is in its review phase. The last two formal site plans that have been submitted to us did show that as a paved parking lot.
Okay, good.
Good. All right. Other questions or comments? So Tsunami Car Wash has been scrubbed from the site. That's my little,
Good one.
My little joke that you guys can all take with you, so you're welcome.
Kelly didn't budge on that one.
No.
Straight face.
She's still typing. She was laughing. She couldn't even put it, just hysterical. I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Brenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Sorry, Mark. Motion carries. We're all
Thank you.
adjourned. Have a good night, buddy.